So I want you to imagine that you were the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So you're out camping in the desert. And I want you to imagine that on that day. And I'm coming to ask you that question. It's time for salah. But I've got this big cut on my head. And I'm worried if I pour water on it, I could make it worse. But I have to make wudu. In order to pray, you can't pray without wudu. So I'm going to ask you, what should I do? What do you think?
هو احنا we're live on YouTube.
One solution maybe is to make
طب why aren't we live on Facebook?
It's
still connecting.
What do you think? Putting the water on all the areas that are required except for the area that's burned. It's another solution. And the other answers.
بس مش عارف ليه هتشتغل دلوقتي.
Inshallah, so solution is to ask.
just هات الشانل بتاعتنا.
And the other solution.
خش على اليوتيوب هات الشانل بتاعتنا. just Google our channel on YouTube.
What do you think? Inshallah, which solution? Put a band-aid on it to cover it. Maybe that will help keep the water out.
No.
What else?
We're live.
Other solution.
Yeah, that's now.
Put a band-aid. Inshallah, you guys
It's on
can-
Facebook?
Band-aids.
No, I'm saying that's today. Right now.
ممكن نعمل حاجة بقى ممكن ناخد اللينك ده.
Sometimes they would bandage, cover. You know, it's hard to have a band-aid. But it's a good idea.
Sorry. Okay, fine. Let me open. Sorry.
Good. So this is, mashallah, you came up with a solution that helps kind of balance the two. These are good, they're making great thoughts. Any other ideas? There's one answer that I think is really important that I haven't heard. Sorry, you can say it a little louder. Oh, there's a microphone. There's one answer that I think
لقيت على الفيسبوك؟
that I haven't heard. So you're saying maybe that you would have an excuse that it doesn't need to be like the rule in the same way. Did I understand you correctly? Excellent. It's a good solution. There's one answer.
You want to repeat this one?
There's more than one, but there's one that's very important in addition to these great answers. Who would just say, I don't know? Who would feel comfortable saying, I don't know? Raise your hand. Don't be embarrassed. Who would say, I don't know? Okay. Raise it higher. It takes a lot of courage to be able to say, I don't know. It takes a lot of courage.
How? What I don't know. What I don't know?
don't know ايه؟ لا ما I don't know فعلا. الحاجات اللايف دي مش not my expertise أوي يعني.
هو كان كل الموضوع محتاج ان احنا نتواجل بس وده مش طب خالص بس احنا
بس لسه connecting على فيسبوك. بس we're not live on Facebook.
مين قال ان احنا لايف؟
احنا لايف على
اليوتيوب اليوتيوب
بس ايه داخل الستريم بتاع التايب بتاع امبارح.
انا ما اعرفش يا عم بقى، انا ما عرفتش، احنا قاعدين بنحاول نتشقلب هنا مش عارفين احنا
فكروا directly على فيسبوك كليك unless احنا غيرناه عشان امبارح.
ما غيرناش عشان امبارح.
ممكن تفهمنا بقى انت بتعمل ايه عشان نبقى نعمله بعد كده، عشان احنا قاعدين تايهين قاعدين بنتشقلب.
ماشي.
هينفع تغير التايتل اصلا
بتاع اليوتيوب ان شاء الله؟ عايز تدي حاجه التايتل الفيسبوك؟
هو اسمه هو اسمه التايتل في الفيسبوك، واليوتيوب اسمه ثانيه واحده
be a parent help them lead. ده حاجه تانية، ده مش عارف ده ايه ده. ماشي.
understanding why we are here.
انا بيقول ان لو سامعين احنا مش سامع الشيخ. السلام عليكم.
And I remember a couple of you said to come on back. Seriously who we ask, when we ask, and what we ask. It's okay to be confused about our deen. It's okay to have a question that we're not sure about. But it's not okay to speak without knowledge. It's not okay to say things that might hurt somebody without them knowing. You understand? So the Prophet ﷺ teaches us that when we have questions about our deen, we should ask people that we trust, that are learned, that have studied the deen properly. One of the challenges we have when it comes to confusion in our deen is that a lot of us, we don't ask the right questions to the right people. If you're not feeling well, if you feel sick, who are you going to ask for help? You're going to ask your neighbor? You're going to walk up here to this table and I'll kind of like take this and take your pulse and whatever, give you some medicine out of my pocket. Is that what you're going to do? No, that'll end me up in jail and end you up and very sick. So if you were not feeling physically well, who would you go ask? Who? Say again? A doctor, right? Doctors are trained to help us feel physically well. If you want to get really good at basketball or soccer, right? Where are you going to go? The art class? Huh? You go to a coach that knows more than you, or that knows less than you. Which one? More. That's how you get better. Are you going to join a team with people that challenge you to be better? Or are you going to join a team where everybody's like half your age and not as strong and not as good? You have to be challenged, right? So when it comes to questions about our deen, if you want to take it seriously, if if you want to grow in your deen, if you want to not be confused, then what types of people do you need to ask? People that are learned, people that, you can check with your parents, and people that are trustworthy. You can ask more than one at times. You can go to the classroom, you can study, you can look at books. This means you take your deen seriously. And hanging out with friends like you are right now that help you be a better Muslim, that shows that we take our deen seriously as well. Confusion comes not from not having enough information, but from not knowing how to organize the information that we already have. I'm going to give you some inside information. I don't like to speak badly about people, I'll be very honest with you. But there's a couple shuyukh that are so bad I have to warn you about. Okay? Well, we shouldn't speak badly about people, but there's a couple people that are just, I gotta give you a heads up. Is that okay with you?
Yes.
Alright. There's this person, his name is Sheikh Google. Have you ever heard, anybody here ever heard of Sheikh Google? Huh? Anybody? It's just me? You guys have you ever heard of Sheikh Google? Huh? Have you heard of Sheikh Google over here, sister? Now, what's the problem with Sheikh Google?
He's got too much information.
Sheikh Google tells you whatever you want to hear. So I can go on, Sheikh Google lives on my phone. So I can go on and I say, Sheikh Google, is eating this halal? And then I look, Sheikh Google gives me exactly what I want to hear. He says it's halal. Well, what causes confusion? I come in and say, Sheikh Google, is this haram? And guess what Google says? Haram. Sheikh Google gives you whatever you want to hear. Now, is Google evil? No. It's a tool. But it's a complicated tool. By the way, if you're sick and you want to get more sick, Sheikh Google will make you more sick. Be like, Sheikh Google, I woke up this morning, I felt a stomach ache and a fever. My fever is 101. This is made up, don't worry, I'm not sick. And I'm coughing. Sheikh Google, what I have. Sheikh Google will be like, you're going to die tomorrow. You have a rare disease. And because Sheikh Google can't tell the difference. When I go to the doctor's office, what's the difference? They can look at the symptoms and differentiate between what's serious and what's not. The problem with taking the confusion of our deen to Sheikh Google is that they can't tell the difference, just like they can't tell the difference if you're not feeling well. You understand what I'm saying? So in order to use Google to understand takes training, right? And especially when we're young, we should build a trust with some people that can help us better understand our deen. So what's the number one shirk that you got to be worried about? Don't take your stem from Sheikh Google. Okay? Should I tell you about the second shirk to be worried about?
Yes.
The second one is named Maulana Wikipedia. Anybody ever heard of Maulana Wikipedia? Anybody heard of Mohamed Abutaleb? For all the elders in the audience, if you want to really feel out of date like me, try to talk to your child about what the encyclopedias were like when they were written by Britannica and they were on shelves, and look at them kind of look at you like, wow, what's that? They'll start feeling a little bit older. Wikipedia is written by who? It's written by anyone. So it has very accurate information and has information that's totally off. So if a person has not studied the deen, it's very hard to tell them apart. Now I'm going to tell you about the worst sheikh of them all. I mean, Sheikh Google is rough. Maulana Wikipedia is a trip, but this third one is the worst of them all. Anybody know? Wallahi, the third one is not just one of them, it's like a family, and they're all terrible. Right? They call this family the Mashaykh of social media. And there are a bunch of, one of them is called YouTube, the other one is called TikTok, the third one is called Facebook. There's this one that kind of blurts out really fast. They call themselves Twitter. Right? They are all, what's the challenge with them? They throw stuff out there. The good, the bad, and the ugly. I'm sharing this with you, why? Because when we're confused about the deen, when we have a question about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when we want to understand something, this is a moment where we need somebody that cares about us, that cares about our well-being, that cares about us being strong young believers in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When I put out that question on Facebook, anybody can say anything. That doesn't mean that there isn't good information. Maybe you're following some people that are learned and studied. That's different. But when I post on one line to all my friends on TikTok, hey, I got this really yummy burger here, what do y'all think? And then the next one I'm like, I just don't get this area. Can you all tell me what you think? Those questions are not the same. You understand what I'm saying? These questions are not just anything for anyone to share an opinion or share a thought. So I'm not telling you social media is bad and the internet is bad, it's all awful. I'm telling you, take the knowledge that you get about your deen seriously and you'll get a good outcome. Take it like a joke, and guess what you're going to get back? A joke. Take it like a game, and guess what you're going to get back? A game. If you won't be serious about your heart, don't ask why somebody else is not serious about it. If you're not going to take care of your mind and your heart, then don't ask why nobody else is worried about it either. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us a really beautiful ayah, and I'm going to close with this before I open for your questions, inshallah, your thoughts. It's this amazing ayah in the Quran al-Kareem, where Allah invites us for some of the amazing things that we experience as young Muslims when we feel close with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah says, أَفَمَنْ شَرَحَ اللَّهُ صَدْرَهُ لِلْإِسْلَامِ فَهُوَ عَلَى نُورٍ مِّن رَّبِّهِ. What is the example of the one? And that one could be you. That one could be you, sister. That one could be the youngest person here. That one could be your youth group. That one could be you, Ahmed, or you, Aisha. The Quran could be talking about you and your heart right now. Allah says, one of the example of the one whom Allah opens their heart to al-Islam. By the way, what does Islam mean? What does Islam mean? Islam means submission. In fact, it means a loving submission to Allah. A loving surrender to Allah. That I, as a young Muslim, I take my sports, my school, my family, my love, my ups, my downs, my dunya, I pack it all up, and it's all for you, Ya Allah. That's Islam. Look outside. The birds, the trees, the bushes, the animals, the cows, everybody's on a one-way street to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But you, the human being, Allah gave you a choice. He said you can be good or you can be bad. You can walk the one-way street, or you can do your own weird thing. And you, as a young Muslim, you take this forehead, the top that Allah elevated you with, and lovingly you put it down on the floor for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Do you do that for anybody else? Nobody else. You do it for not even our own parents, not even the scholar, only for Allah. We come down on the ground, honoring Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah says, أَفَمَنْ شَرَحَ اللَّهُ صَدْرَهُ. The example of the one whom Allah opens their chest in loving surrender to Allah. فَهُوَ عَلَى نُورٍ مِّن رَبِّهِ. So they are full of light and illumination from Allah. When we take our deen seriously, when we seek to be good and strong and confident Muslims, Allah brings something into our lives that cannot be described. And the person that misses out on that, what amazing experiences are they missing out on? What beautiful feelings are they missing out on? What closeness and nearness to Allah are they missing out on? What beautiful prayers are they missing out on? What understandings and wisdoms are they missing out on? So part of the beauty that I want to invite you to, young sister and young brother, is that when we take our deen seriously, when we seek knowledge and really confront, so that we have the fullest and most beautiful experience of our lives, inshallah, together. Over the coming months, I've received some requests, inshallah, from the masjid to have a series of sessions with you, dealing with different elements of confusion and questions and difficult areas, so that we can have this comfort here in the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring the questions and the issues that we face as young Muslims, the questions that we hear from school, the questions that we hear from friends, the things that we see on news or online. And if we're not going to do that here, then where are we going to do it? This is the house of Allah. These are our brothers and sisters. And we're having a comfortable conversation in a safe space to be able to deal with these questions together. But I wanted to start with this introduction for you, to offer some tools, some ways on how we can deal with confusion and doubt as young Muslims, inshallah. Someone here have the microphone, inshallah? So, inshallah, we'll open now the floor for any questions or comments that are on your mind. If you have any questions, inshallah, please ask.
Thank you, first of all. And so pretty much most people learn how to, like research tools. So don't trust Wikipedia, don't trust everything on Google. Especially in college, I personally learned it. After someone learned these basic tools, let's say Research 101, they start gaining knowledge. And a lot of this knowledge is not necessarily correct. So what's a good way to hit a break, for example, and hit a brakes and approve your knowledge? So for example, someone hearing these things that you just talked about for the first time, what do you think, what's a good advice for them to actually stop and evaluate some of the big values or the pillars that they always need?
So this question is a wonderful question on really the research tools and how a person can stop and evaluate where they get their knowledge and how to examine and think about their own understanding. I think the answer to this question really varies by age group as a person grows in their understanding. So for young Muslims, here that are still learning, this really can come down to involving the family, inshallah, in selecting spaces, classes, groups, and people that are trustworthy, because they have a sacred trust and an amana with the iman in the hearts of these young people. And I encourage parents to be very involved. Alhamdulillah, as I've mentioned before, in this masjid, and we wish khayr and goodness for all the houses of Allah and all of our Islamic workers and organizations. But it really sticks out to me that, mashallah, the number of youth and the number of youth workers that are engaged in this masjid. And so thinking beyond that also, I encourage our parents and our families to be very engaged in scrutinizing and examining the places that our children frequent, because this is very, very important, especially in their young and formative years. As, alhamdulillah, a person progresses into high school, college, young professionals, young adults, the Islamic sciences are oceans. And so a person has to be honest with themselves in terms of their own investment and their own level of understanding these research methods. These research methods are not a secret, they're not a black hole, they can be learned. But it involves essentially, making effort and sitting in a classroom to understand how to navigate this. There is no harm in finding trustworthy teachers or students of knowledge to help with this navigation at first. And so, as a person is sitting in a class on ulum al-Quran, or hadith, or fiqh, they will learn the trustworthy sources and the ways to examine this, and eventually can learn those tools themselves. This is not required to be a good Muslim. A person can be a good Muslim simply knowing people and resources that they can consult, that they trust and can follow. This is sufficient. And in our times, I really encourage people to consider councils, like fiqh councils and groups that represent scholarship across diverse groups and ethnicities and understandings. Always, whether as young Muslims or older Muslims, as with every study, and this is a little bit advanced, I know, for the young Muslims here, but it's good for us to learn, there is a difference between primary sources and secondary sources. The primary sources of our deen are what? It's not a trick question, I promise you. The Quran al-Kareem, Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. If you're reading something in English and it's confusing, I have news for you. The Prophet ﷺ did not speak English, right? So always there is a chance that confusion is introduced in translation. A lot of us, we read about the Quran, but I really encourage us to read the Quran for ourselves. If a person is not comfortable reading Arabic, then reading translations in addition to tafsir. But a person does not need to spend a lifetime reading only tafsir and commentary on the Quran. You can read the scripture and the words of Allah for ourselves at whatever level we can. So I think this is a good goal for the young professional, for parents, for Muslims to build towards. But in the meantime, being connected to scholarship and resources and students of knowledge is important in being able to navigate these oceans. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala discuss.
How many Qur'ans are in the world?
One more time.
How many Qur'ans are in the world?
How many Qur'ans are in the world? This is a very beautiful question, by the way. And we can think about this question in two ways. When we say how many Qur'ans are in the world, I'll tell you something amazing. There is only one Qur'an in the entire universe. Meaning that in Qur'an al-Kareem, the words of Allah, there's no versions. There's no two. You can go all the way across the Atlantic, across the Pacific, north, south, You can go to Florida, you can go to Washington, you can go anywhere, there's only one Quran. But when you think about the Mus'haf, meaning the printed book of the Quran, Allah has blessed us now. There are millions and millions in the world. And this helps, every person have an opportunity to read the Quran. But these are just copies of the printed word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Quran itself, there's only one. Every color of Muslim, every young Muslim, older Muslim, men, women, boys and girls, everybody reads only one Quran, which is the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's very special. It's a beautiful question. What's your name? Yusuf, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you for this beautiful question, Brother Yusuf.
For this speech, we technology and children. I just have a very quick question. I met a little girl last week, and she challenged me with this important question. I don't want to add it to the pot where I confuse our little ones and children, but I think it's important. I really admit that I did not succeed answering her question. And she wanted to know, how is Allah the first thing? How was he created? Was he born? I tried as much as I could going over Surah Al-Ikhlas with her, and I tried my best I can. I really did not succeed convincing her, and I promised her that we'll do my research and answer her question. Number 2 question, if you can please go over a girl, not our friend, but a friend girl for boys. Is it okay if we go out and we're a group, it's 3 boys and 5 girls and we're just friends? There's nothing wrong with that, and parents are confused.
I didn't catch the second question, I'm sorry. I didn't catch the second question.
My second question is, what are the boundaries, or how can we explain to our boys or girls the relationship between boys and girls? How much can we meet girls and boys and be together? Where are the limits, and what's haram, what's halal, what's okay and what's not okay?
On the first question, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as you mentioned, says, وَالْأَوَّلُ وَالْآخِرُ. He is the first and the last among the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He was not born, and you mentioned Surah Al-Ikhlas. These principles in our being remind us and teach us of how Allah is unlike His creation. These descriptions of Allah are not against our mind, but they are beyond our mind. They are what we would call supra-rational, right? Not irrational, but supra-rational, beyond the mind. Because in our limited existence, we are confined to this dunya, to this space where everything has a beginning and an end, and everything does have a beginning and an end, except for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. However, it is not beyond our comprehension and our imagination to know that at the beginning of all things, at the beginning of the causer of all causes, is an uncaused cause, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, one that is beyond all of this. What we are not able to do is to understand how. And this is to be expected because it is not in our ability to understand anything without a beginning or an end. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not only in this description, but in the full realization of His names and His attributes, Allah Azza wa Jalla is beyond and unlike any of His creation. And our minds can only relate to something that is like something we have experienced. So this can be a key to help the questioner that you're mentioning and us understand better. If we take examples totally away from theology and from the description of Allah. I'll give a light example that our young ones can understand. Who here ever has eaten a mango? They're like, what's wrong with this guy? Who's ever eaten a mango? Describe to me the taste of a mango if I've never eaten it before.
It's like mango juice.
Like mango juice, but I haven't had mango juice. But thank you for the description. So how do you describe it to someone that never had mango juice? It's a good description. I'm just pushing you further. I heard sweet. Sweet like what? Sweet like oranges or like apples? You guys are struggling, aren't you? This is pretty hard. That's because our minds cannot relate to something we have not experienced. Even our nightmares, our imagination, our superheroes, they're all just exaggerations of something that we've seen or tasted or smelled. We can't describe something that's unlike our existence. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the full understanding of His attributes, this is true of all of His characteristics. But we can relate to the rahmah of Allah by the rahmah that we see here. We can relate that there is something that became before the child in their parent, and before them, and before them. But then beyond all of that is what is before everything and after everything is not limited by time. So generally in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's attributes, our minds cannot fully comprehend, only Allah knows the reality of Himself, but it can relate in a limited but meaningful sense. The second question, this really would be a wonderful topic for a whole seminar, inshallah, but as a general rule, our deen gives general guidelines with some fixed rules on gender interactions. A lot of it is based on judgment and best practices. So, for example, our deen prohibits al-khalwa, the isolation between an unrelated man and an unrelated woman, as one of the ways to further from harm and problems. It forbids, excessive physical contact, and on and on and on. But in general, the application of gender relations in Islam is a judgment based on higher principles, not a list of specific do's and don'ts. There's only very limited do's and don'ts, such as the, not having relations outside of things such as the mahram, such as the khalwa, these types of rules. So ultimately, these principles, these values, are what need to be taught for gender relations more than specific do's and don'ts, although the do's and don'ts are important in the guidelines of our deen. But the values that guide healthy relationships are much more and much further reaching than the specific do's and don'ts, which are limited, right? And ultimately, a good way we can summarize many of these rules is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promotes professional, public interactions that are purposeful between unrelated members of the opposite gender. Professional, purposeful interactions that are public in nature. I cannot build from that a curfew, or what text message goes and doesn't go, or whether this message, direct message on Instagram is halal or haram. The deen does not give that level of specifics. It gives principles that motivate general guidelines. And I encourage our parents and our families to have active conversations with their young ones as they come of age, to think practically, naturally, in the teenage years and the years where people start thinking about courtship. There are feelings that are different from a person that is more established or, later in life and so on. So understanding these general principles can help us, inshallah. This is a general idea, but certainly we could have a dedicated session on it, inshallah. Other questions?
So what if, you go to different experts, say, you go to one, of the highest knowledge you can find, and another of the highest knowledge you can find, and they just both give different answers. Where are you supposed to go from there?
Beautiful question. So much. The question was, what if we go to two people of knowledge and they give different answers? So much of our deen is agreed upon and clear. No two learned people will disagree about it. And I want to mention this first, because sometimes we get online, remember those mashaykh I talked to you about, Sheikh Google, Nalina, Wikipedia, they'll tell you everything is up for discussion. It's not true. I can ask you right now, how many blogs do we have? It's not your question. One. How many prayers in a day? 5. Are we supposed to give of what Allah gave us in charity or not? We are. Where is Hajj made to? Egypt or Pakistan or Mecca? Mecca. You see all these things, and I could go with another 1,000 questions. Did anybody disagree in this room on the questions I asked? Are we supposed to be good to our parents? Did Allah give us responsibilities towards our relatives? Will Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ask us about doing right by our neighbors? You see, all of these things, everybody is clear. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it clear in our deen. So much in our deen, what Allah and His Messenger have come with is crystal clear. In these matters, remember, Islam means what? Loving, submission, surrender. We submit to the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There are other things where Allah has given us room. Meaning that learned people may come to different conclusions. You understand what I'm saying? So if I say, I live in Holly Springs and I'm going to Greensboro, can I pray Salatul Safa, the traveler's prayer? And one person might say, mashallah, the Sheikh already responded, alhamdulillah. She said yes. So our Sheikh that here said yes. Personally, I agree with her, honestly. I think she's absolutely right. But with due respect, someone else, another Sheikh who's learned, might say, no. Why? Because Greensboro is like far, but not super far. If I tell them if I'm going to like Mecca, they're all going to say you can pray. You get it? What does this mean? If it was super important, Allah would have made it crystal clear. You understand? Yes. It means that Allah left room for different opinions. Can I let you guys in on a little secret? Muslims love to make drama over this stuff. Muslims love to make drama, like big discussions over stuff. Just chill out, you know what I'm saying? The Sheikh has said you can pray in Greensboro. Our young Sheikh over here said you can. You want to pray somewhere? Go for it. You don't, it's okay. Allah gave us room as long as we're asking people of knowledge. As long as we're asking trustworthy people. Don't you go on Facebook and ask a bunch of your friends right after you ask them about the hamburger and tell them they told me, okay, that's different. We agree? Yes. But you ask somebody of knowledge, it's okay to ask a second person. And this is one of the etiquettes, one of the behaviors Islam teaches us. It teaches us to be respectful of other people. You understand what I'm saying? Yes. It teaches us to be respectful of other opinions. We can have different views, but we don't have to be disagreeable people. We don't have to be nasty. You can have your opinion and I can have my opinion. Anybody here like a fan of like the NBA? Huh? No? You guys don't know what the NBA is, do you? Huh? No? It's okay. The NBA is the National Basketball Association. It's where they play basketball in America at the professional level in the men's league. Anybody here? What's the Charlotte team called? The Hornets. Anybody a fan of the Hornets? Oh, it looks like I asked a mean question. Huh? So there's no Hornets fan here? Man, okay. Well, I'll let you guys in on a little secret. I'm a Houston Rockets fan. I'm old school. There was this great player called Hakeem Olajuwon. He was a Muslim. He was a very good Muslim. I play basketball just like Hakeem Olajuwon, but I'm no good. He was good. I do all the same moves, but the ball doesn't go in the bucket. Are you guys Houston Rockets fans? Maybe not. Does that mean we need to hate each other? No. It's okay. You can have your preference. I can have my preference. We're still all what? Muslims. Now that's just games. That's just sports. Questions about deen are more serious. But Allah made it okay for us to have different opinions and different preferences. So one of the ways that we show the beauty of our Islam is that we accept and tolerate different views as well. This is one way you can deal with different views about it. It's a beautiful question. Allah bless you. Other questions?
So I have a question. You said that when it comes to giving advice, the most important people you can probably go to are your parents. So how well you grow up and then you come to the realization some of the stuff your parents gave you were actually wrong or were you not right? How do you come to that conclusion and how do you go from there?
Bless you for this question. One of the elements of us growing and maturing as human beings is going through the evolution of how we understand our parents as a gateway to how we understand other people. Many people, when they're very young, boys and girls, their parents are perfect. And they're their reference for everything. And then, in America, many teenagers go through kind of a rebellious period. And there's that period where some people, they think their parents have never done anything right in their lives. But as we grow and mature, and Islam helps us grow faster and mature faster, we get to the level where we're able to see our parents as human beings. We're able to see the many beautiful things that they gave us, and we're able to see their flaws and their human shortcomings in context. This can be difficult at first. This can be very difficult as part of the maturity of the human being. But then, often when a person has to do it for themselves, especially if Allah blesses them with their own children, then they go back and they look at their parents like, wow, I had no idea how hard this is. Light-hearted story, praying to Allah that what comes from my heart enters yours. You know, when I was blessed with with our first child, my son, alhamdulillah, I was in the hospital, my father was alive, alhamdulillah, those factors are ours and yours. I called my parents, and I apologized for my whole life between age 12 and 25. And my child, he hadn't even left the hospital yet. And my father let out this full laugh. And he told me, son, do you know how the Quran begins with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim? I said, yes. He said, you haven't finished the bab yet. You haven't finished the first letter. It's a long journey ahead. So I'm speaking in generalities. To be very sensitive, there are individual, tests that Allah selects. I'm not talking about abusive behaviors and unacceptable behaviors where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tests like Prophet Ibrahim with his son and his father. But the majority of families where our parents are just trying hard in a difficult time, we should understand our parents grew up with a lot less resources to understand Islam than we did. I can still remember things from my grandmother, alayha rahmatullah, who was one of the most patient and open-hearted people that I ever met in my life. The most patient human being I ever met by far. I can still remember her saying these things that were just like totally wrong. When it would come to fast, she'd say, no, I'm fasting for you, which is not a thing, right? But it was just, she didn't have a lot of the resources that we have. The idea that Hajj is made right before you die, and you wait until the end. But I know it wasn't mean-spirited. You know what I mean? I know it wasn't because they were trying to teach me the wrong thing. And I remember the first time, I'm sharing something personal for me, by way of encouragement. You know, the first time I sat with a proper sheikh and recited the Quran, I was a teenager. And I had been the top of my class, memorized part of the Quran, and I sat with a sheikh from Al-Azhar, the first time I ever did. And I recited from Juz Amma, and then Juz Tabarak, and he asked me for Surah Yasin. He didn't correct me once. it came in my head that, mashallah, Abdul Basit, was reciting, I'm reciting perfectly. And then when I finished, the Shaykh kind of smiled. And he told me, if you wish to complete the memorization of the Quran, then you will have to start by repeating everything that you've done. Everything I had done was wrong. I wasn't reciting with tajweed. I wasn't worth correcting. But he told me something. He said, if you have the humility to do this, then I pray that Allah will open all the rest for you. I don't hold a grudge in my heart because those volunteers that were teaching me, they were teaching with what they had. What they had was just not learned. You see what I'm saying? So our parents, everyone is on their faith journey, right? And again, many parents give of the best that they have. Our ummah is generally suffering from weakness. And we're not the sweetest things since sliced bread, right? We're on our own journeys. But many of us, I get it, it really hurts. Because growing up, we have this hot mix of culture with Islam, with America, with this and that, and it's like, it's so confusing and it's frustrating. Because it's like, I just want to learn my deen properly. But for many people, it just never knew any better, right? They gave us of the best. And sometimes even we have an opportunity for learning while our parents or our relatives or our loved ones are still coming along for the journey. We should try to be patient, right? And to understand that this is just part of our humanity, and our ummah today is just suffering. It's weak. So the way we learn deen, most of us, is this hot mess of a mix of culture and East and West and this and colonialism and this. But all of this has a solution. We come back to learning our deen properly. Make effort, care, and put our children ahead of what we had as young people. And by the way, it's only possible because we're standing on the shoulders of those that came before us. But no doubt, what we hope for our young ones is to not have this very confusing environment that many of us grew up in, and trying to pick between an Arab Islam and a Desi Islam and an American Islam and a colonial Islam and all this nonsense that we grew up with. To just come back to the prophetic example. But it's easier said than done. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best.
A question about, the man that killed 99 people, and then he asked someone if Allah would forgive him, and he said no. So he killed that person and killed 100 people. So what if the second man that he went to, he said Allah would forgive him? What if he said that he wouldn't, or he doesn't know? How would he get the answer?
MashaAllah. Very, very powerful question. So, this person, the way that they answered, took away the hope from this man that had committed sins. And the sins that he had committed were very serious, but the rahmah and the mercy of Allah is much greater. When the man answered this way, the person that had done wrong lost hope. So when they lost hope, they might as well just be more bad, and that's what they ended up doing. But if we imagine a different scenario, where this scholar, where this person, had not said that there's no hope, but said that I don't know. At first that can seem overwhelming, but think about it. If someone's asking you a question, and you tell them, I don't know, but I can help you connect with somebody who does. I don't know, but if you give me, in our times, your cell phone number, or let me share with you the contact information of the local masjid, they may have somebody that knows. Then, that person, they would still not feel like the doors of the rahmah of Allah have been shut in their face, although that person does not have the answer. So we should never be shy to say, I don't know. And you can add to it, but I'd love to help you find out. I'd love to connect you with somebody that may know. I'd like to give you the contact, and you can take the contact information of your local masjid and, or other resources that it can help, inshallah, get somebody answered. No one that is serious about finding an answer will not respect this. If somebody says, no, I don't want to do it, they weren't serious about finding the answer in the first place. You see what I'm saying? If somebody's not willing to make that effort, then they weren't serious about finding the answer in the first place. Anyone that is serious will respect this answer, will respect someone that says, I do. Wallah.
So I have two questions. My first one is, like, how do you know that you're doing enough for Allah? Like, let's say, that you're doing enough for Allah. Like, for example, you read the Quran and like you pray and you do all of the things, but then, there may be things that, like, you don't do that could be, like, that can give you extra hasanat, but you don't do. So, like, how do you know, or when do you know that, like, you've done enough for Allah, or you're doing enough for Allah?
Question of how do you know that you're doing enough for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Remember in general that al-ibadah and the worship of Allah is a competition with yourself. Meaning that the standard that you are setting is not your neighbor. It's not even for our own parents. It's not for our friends. It's for us to be the very best of ourselves for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And how do I know that I'm doing enough? Allah gave us a beautiful way to see the oceans of this deen, but understand what we have to do. In giving us priorities. He gave us the fard, the obligations, and He gave us extra good things, mustahabbat and other things that we can draw closer and closer to Allah. So I want to always start with what Allah emphasized first. The prayers. As some of you start to get your first internships and jobs, to give zakat and sadaqah, even if you're making your first $1,000, that's beautiful. Give your $25 of zakat. It's your first ibadah. As you think about Ramadan, as you think about being good to your parents, as you think about being a good brother or sister to your siblings, as you think about the type of friend you are, these are things that Allah made obligatory on you. These are fara'id, saying the truth, being honest in school, not cheating. These are all obligations. And that's where we start. And if we're doing less than that, don't hold your head down. Challenge yourself to grow and grow and grow in what Allah said first. It is important to make the first things first. And reading the Quran is from our obligations in the deen. As you build that, then you can add to it, gradually so you don't overwhelm yourself. So you can add some rak'at al-sunnah. You can add some extra learning activities. You can go out and feed the homeless or serve people that are in need. All of these are examples on how to grow. But if you're ever looking to measure yourself, the measurement is that. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that my servant does not draw near to me with anything more beloved to me than what I've made obligatory, what I've made fun for them. So that's a way, that's like a measurement stick that you can always have. All of us.
And then my second question is, so when you do something, let's say like you build a masjid, and people start going to it, you get hasanat, right? But like, let's say your friend borrowed $25 and you didn't know why. Like, you help them out, and let's say they went and bought something bad, like alcohol or anything. Did you get the fee? Like, did you get sins for like giving them money?
Sorry, can you say that one more time?
So like, you know how you let's say you build a masjid and people start coming to it, you get snapped. But let's say like your friend asked for $25 to you because they didn't have any money, and you gave them to them to be nice, but then you didn't know what they were using it for, or let's say they lied and they went and bought alcohol, would you get finished for that?
Great question. So the example of giving some money to someone because they asked for it, but then, without you knowing, they maybe do something bad with that money. You get sins for it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. Allah does not burden a soul with more than it can bear, right? And He says, وَلَا تَزِرُ وَازِرَةٌ وِزْرَ أُخْرَى. That no person carries the wrongdoing of another person. So in the example you gave that money because they asked for it. You gave them to be a good friend. You gave them to help them out. And so these are all good deeds. You did good deeds for it. Without your knowledge, they went and did something bad with that money. Allah does not hold us to account for that which we don't know or for the actions of other people. What this might affect is that if you know now that this is what that person does, maybe the next time you don't give them because you have that knowledge. But it is not your fault or a sin from the first time because there was no way to know what that person would do. Each person is responsible for themselves. So I know we're coming to the end of our time on this session. I want to just take a moment in a rapid fire kind of closing roundtable. I want to ask if you have any requests or suggestions for future topics that you'd like to hear about as a youth group. Just raise your hand and the microphone's coming around, just in one line or a couple words. Other topics, requests, ideas that you would like to hear.
Just as you touched on the not to do's, your shirk movement, etc. I'm wondering if there are shuyukh that really focus. I know that some that do that all focus on the youth. So I'm wondering if we can build like a checklist that we can help parents and the youth. They just say, as we do, we go. I trust Mohamed Abutaleb. Let me see if he has a khutbah on this topic. If not, I may go to the shuyukh that we trust. Similarly, do we have shuyukh that really build their whole, body of work specifically for the youth so that we can build a checklist and help use it? Go to this list. Usually, you should be able to find, something. I'm wondering if we need to have a checklist, such a checklist.
That would be a wonderful, thing to take on, to add some resources for families, supporting Muslim families, in addition to the great work here with Masrali and the Noor and some of the great youth work in the area. There are resources. This is not an exhaustive list, but off the top of my head, there's some youth and teen-oriented programs, for example, with Holland Seminary and their podcasts, with Sheikh Suhaib Webb and the Swiss Institute. There are some publishers that especially focus on books and programs such as Learning Roots and Good Word Kids and others. So this would be wonderful, inshallah, to exchange these ideas together.
I think one thing it's not only one thing, but I think it's going to open up the door for a lot of topics. But for youth growing up, how to be able to deal with society and the peer pressure that they're on, and still preserving their identity, their beliefs. I think that's one thing. The other thing is also to know what's out there, what is being said about Islam, and why it's being said, and how to have the right tools and knowledge to explain that to people. Because as we get to the world out there, you hear stuff that people know. It could be just out of that they either don't have the right information or enough information, or they have the wrong resource of information.
Allah bless you. Just writing these ideas on my notes. I think we had one last comment here. Then it's time for Adhan Salat, so we'll following a couple of minutes.
So I don't know if it would be like a one-liner one. So there is like how to give. There's no force in religion, but as concerned parents, what can we do? Like what are some of the best practices of parenting, especially the teenage kids? How can we help them navigate to like to the religion and not being forceful? Because like with teenagers, everything seems forceful. So yeah, some of those along those lines, some of the suggestions or best practices. We'll appreciate it.
إن شاء الله we'll close with dua and then we'll have Adhan Salat al-Asr. It was wonderful spending this time with you. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept from us, bless our children, protect our parents, grant us a vibrant relationship with the Quran al-Kareem, honor and have mercy on our parents as they raised us when we were young. ربنا تقبل منا انك انت السميع العليم وتب علينا انك انت التواب الرحيم سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد ان لا اله الا انت نستغفرك ونتوب اليك جزاك الله خيرا والسلام عليكم.
أنا وقفت بس اقترب بين الشاحن عشان أحتاجه في السيشن التانية بالصوت عشان خد أنا بره أنا بقطع الشاحن عشان يمسك بص هنا في ستارت ريكوردينج لما نبدأ هندوس ستارت ريكوردينج ماشي. طب ما احنا يبقى محتاجين لابتوب هنا عشان الصوت